Next on Max TV, we take a look at AGBEKO PEREZ and we preview Dawson Johnson, the rematch. And we have news and notes coming up on the next round. And welcome to the next round, brought to you by Everlast Steve, Kim, Gabe Montoya, talking boxing once again. We have a big show. We begin round number one. It was showtime from the Treasure Island in Las Vegas in what was a hell of a scrap for the IBF Bantamweight title. We have a new champion in Yanni Perez, 12-round decision over Joseph King Kong AGBEKO. Your scores, 116-111. And two scorecards, 117-110 in favor of Perez. Kicking off this broadcast for the WBC interim lightweight title, Antonio DEMARCO with a TKO in 10 rounds over Jose ALFARO. I tell you what, the upset special tasted good this week. Yanni Perez, to me, was a real bantamweight who have much more dimensions than Vic Darchinyan. I think AGBEKO was a little bit overvalued. Yes, it was a good victory. Bottom line is Darchinyan was basically a one-dimensional, one-arm bandit. All you had to look for was that big, lanky, loopy left hand. Yeah. Well, the thing about Yanni Perez, he didn't just give you a 1 and a 2 to worry about. Came back with a clean-up hook, and he put punches together, and he was there the whole night. From a physical perspective, unlike Darchinyan, this wasn't a blown-up 12 or 15-pounder. This was a bantamweight that almost looked like a featherweight in there. Yeah, it was really, he kind of swung it the other way, where, you know, in the last fight, AGBEKO Darchinyan, AGBEKO was a little more of the technically sound guy and was able to kind of shoot down the middle against the wider Darchinyan. In this fight, he was more of the wide puncher. And Perez, you know, he stayed inside the pocket, stayed behind a nice high guard, and just kept jabbing, and setting up the right hand to set up the left hook. We had talked about it last week that, if he threw 3 or 4 punches, 3 and 4 were going to land, and it turned out to be true. Yeah, and he seemed to be a little bit tighter technically. You talk about the frame, and this guy came right inside the pocket and shot punches very straight for the most part. And I think the activity and the consistency level of Yanni Perez really was the difference. He started off quick, set the tempo, then the fight evened up. And I really thought in the last 3-4 rounds, he was a little bit stronger, a little bit fresher, and I thought he worked AGBEKO. I thought the fight was a little bit closer than the scorecards read, but I think clearly, even with the dubious knockdown in the 10th caused by the clash of heads, I think Yanni Perez clearly, yet closely, won this fight. I would agree. It was a very tight fight. There was several rounds in there where it was really hard to score, but he seemed to be the guy that was in charge. I mean, AGBEKO, kind of cast his die fast. I'm going to throw 1,000 punches, and I'm going to wear you out. And I think he, overestimated himself a little bit. He was a little overconfident, thinking he was going to knock Perez out, just kind of blow him out of there. And, Perez wasn't having it. He clearly was the bigger guy, and he had the smarter game plan. I'm going to stay behind the jab. No matter how many punches this guy throws, I'm going to stay with the quality. And he landed the harder, crisper shots. Taking a look at the perspective of this fight from 2009 and historically, a couple of things come to mind. Yanni Perez, I think, has been in 2 of the top 5 fights of 2009. The fight against Silence Mabuza, which was a cracker. This one definitely has to be a candidate for Fight of the Year. Absolutely. Also, because of that, and the fact he's now a world champion, beating one of the very best guys in the world, I think he gets Fighter of the Year consideration. Not so sure he's glamorous enough to win it. I'm sure he'll be overlooked by a lot of people. Also, take a look at this bantamweight division. If you were going to do a Super 6 format, I would certainly include Yanni Perez. I would still include AGBEKO. Then you got guys like Hasegawa and Selmo Moreno. This is a loaded division. You can make a lot of fights if you mix and match the names. Yeah, and to me, coming into the fight, I thought Hasegawa was the guy to beat. But then you look at Perez and how resilient he is. He's got a solid chin, and he's technically very sound. I mean, I'd love to see Hasegawa versus Perez. Man. Yeah, it's an all-action fight. Japanese fighters are not like Japanese cars. They don't come over here unless they really have to. They don't really import a lot. And I will say this, from a style perspective, I thought AGBEKO really was a great matchup for Perez because he's going to stay in the pocket, he's going to stand right there, and like I say, you don't need a GSP to find him. Now, the difference is with Hasegawa, quick southpaw that uses his feet a lot, goes in and out. I don't think will give the same type of opportunities for Perez to sit down and throw those 8-punch combinations. Again, styles can make fights. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think he's going to, throw combinations and step around to the side of Perez and get around behind that tight guard. I think he matches up as the favorite in the fight. To me, he's the best bantamweight in the world. So. Yeah, and Yanni Perez, I'll say this, I don't care if he's the best bantamweight in the world or the 10th best bantamweight. I think he is must-see TV. This guy throws punches. He's big. He's strong. He's rugged. He's not hard to find. He stands right there and he fights. You take a look at any guy that can be in 2 Fight of the Years in back-to-back, and you look at some of his other performances on ShowBox where he stops guys.
Yeah.
Anytime Yanni PEREZ fights, I think it should be televised, and two, I want to be in front of that couch or in that arena.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a guy, you got to give props to Showtime for recognizing a solid fighter. He's had a loss, and he's a guy that maybe other networks would ignore, but they've consistently kept him on, and he's worth it every time.
Oh, I know of a network that would have definitely ignored this fight for several reasons, and you've got to give Thompson Boxing Promotions credit for a local promoter which runs a very, very good club show out there in Ontario. They have developed from scratch, with the late help of Gary Shaw, 2 world champions in Tim Bradley and now Yanni PEREZ. I don't think people understand how difficult that is in 2009, where most of your primetime talent goes to some of the name brand promoters. This is the mom and pop shop that is now developing and almost rivaling what Walmart is doing to a certain degree. I'm a big fan of Thompson Boxing Promotions. Gabe, Antonio DeMarco, to paraphrase Dennis Green, he is who we thought he was, but better.
Yeah.
I think DeMarco, we said maybe he's a lower top 10 lightweight. You know what? I think he's top 5.
Yeah.
I think he's tall, he's lanky, he's strong, he's got wiry strength. And the thing I really like about him is he's not going to win any bench press competitions, but he's got great leverage and torque on his punches when he sits down.
Oh, yeah. And there's intelligence there. You can see almost over the Kid DeMarco fight and the Angie Sajahu fight coming into this one, they're kind of slowly building him towards Edwin Valero. They're getting him to sit down and not go to war, as is his tendency, and stay behind that long, lanky jab and the cross right behind it. I thought he fought a brilliant fight. It was really impressive. Alfaro wanted to make a battle out of it, and anytime he'd get close, he'd just get 1-2'd, and then DeMarco would step out to the side and rinse and repeat. It was beautiful to watch.
They say about guys like DeMarco that they get you drunk and then they mug you, and that's what he does. For the first 6, 7, 8 rounds, it doesn't look like he's doing much, but he slowly breaks you down, and as the fight goes on, he starts to sit down a little bit, and he's got that great leverage that I talked about.
Oh, yeah.
And the one thing he does, he has an uncanny ability. I don't know if I really want to call it true counterpunching, but he has a way, Gabe, of running opponents into his punches, basically really making those punches even stronger. I think, to me, this guy's a tough matchup for anyone. Let me tell you, 6, 7 months ago, I thought you would have been nuts if you say that DeMarco would be competitive or could beat Edwin Valero. Folks, I'm saying it right now. This would be a very, very tough fight for Edwin Valero.
I think it goes all the way down to the wire. I mean, I still think that with his power, anybody that fights Edwin Valero is going to have to pitch pretty much a perfect game. But DeMarco did this weekend. He had a guy that was a power puncher, that was looking to knock him out and looking to pressure him, and he controlled him easily through the fight. And not only that, but, it wasn't like he just jabbed and moved all fight like a Durrell and was content to get the decision. He was looking for the knockout, looking to set it up. There were times where he would hurt Alfaro, and he would kind of press the action, realize it wasn't time, and go back to boxing. I love that straight left to the body, and it slowly started to double him over, and it set up the hook. It was a beautiful performance. I think he would give Edwin Valero a run for his money.
And the thing about DeMarco is he looks like a guy that a strong gust of wind could blow him over, but we talk about that natural, wiry strength, and certain guys in boxing, they're not going to make the cover of Muscle and Fitness, but they have that durability and that staying power. And the one thing about DeMarco, I get the sense he does catch pretty well.
Yeah.
And like you talked about, when he senses it's the time to finish a guy and push him over the cliff, he does shift gears very well, and he does change speeds. I think DeMarco is a very, very good young fighter.
And he finishes intelligently, too. He fought the whole thing at long range, and he finished pretty much at long range. While he's still flurried, he didn't get caught with anything stupid, and he just got the job done.
So there you have it from the Treasure Island. It was indeed showtime. We come back, we take a look at the rematch. Glenn Johnson, Chad Dawson. And we are back on the next round, brought to you by Everlast Steve Kim, Gabe Montoya, talking boxing, and the focus shifts to the XL Center in Hartford, Connecticut. The rematch for the WBC interim light heavyweight title. Chad Dawson takes on Glenn Johnson. And opening up this HBO broadcast, junior middleweights battle, Alfred Angulo takes on Harry Joe Yorgey. I want to say it right now. I thought Glenn Johnson won the first fight. I thought he walked him down. I thought he threw some booming right hands that staggered and buzzed Chad Dawson a couple times, but here's the question. Here's a guy, Glenn Johnson, from the 305, Miami, Florida. That first fight was in Tampa. He didn't come close to winning that fight on the scorecards.
No.
Here's the problem for the gentleman / road warrior. We're in Hartford, Connecticut now. That's about an hour away from Chad Dawson's home Can he possibly win a decision
I don't
on
think
Saturday
so.
night?
I don't think so. You know, really at 40, you know, he is who he is. He's a tireless gym rat. He's going to come forward behind an endless assault of punches and a cast iron chin. And I think, you know, he fought as good of a fight as he could against Chad Dawson, but, you know, it's been some time. He's had a couple stay busy fights since then and looked very good doing it. But I think coming out of it, you know, when I go into a rematch, I always think, you know, who can improve on their game more? And I think, you know, Glenn Johnson fought as good a fight as he could, and I think Chad Dawson can definitely improve in this fight. I think he needs to step around, forget about the knockout. It's not going to happen with Glenn Johnson unless you cut him. And just, you know, stick with the jab, step around, throw combinations, and pace yourself well.
So wait a minute, Gabe, are you saying that whatever you thought of the scorecards the first fight, and I do believe Glenn Johnson won, I think you may agree with me, that was much closer than what the judges had it. You're saying that Glenn Johnson, Chad Dawson, that this time Chad Dawson separates himself just a little bit more?
I think so. I think it's very possible. You know, granted, he did have that hand injury, and it kind of was a bit of a layoff for him. And when you have that happen, you don't really kind of, you know, grow as much, you know, as a fighter. You get back into camp, you're worrying about losing weight and getting back into shape. But I think he's an intelligent guy. I think he's a guy with a lot of tools, maybe not as much power as he thought he did. And learning from that first fight, I think he could definitely set up a game plan to separate
Gabe,
himself.
I disagree. I think it's every bit the dogfight as the first one.
Really?
And talking to Glenn Johnson for the main event, who we'll have in a couple days, he said he's going to start quicker. He said it without saying it, but he's going to have to make an adjustment. The adjustment is, instead of getting started in rounds 4, 5, and 6, he's got to be two-fisted from the very, very beginning and apply quicker pressure if he can. And the thing is, not only does Chad Dawson not have great power as a light heavyweight, he's a sharp puncher, not a devastating one.
Right.
I don't think his chin is all that great. I really don't. And I think that's a key factor. Chad Dawson, I think, has been given a couple of big, very big welfare checks or lottery tickets in the form of Antonio Tarver, who really provided, I don't want to say no resistance, but Antonio Tarver has his mouth. Unfortunately, he doesn't have his legs and his reflexes anymore. No. And the one thing about Glenn Johnson, he is not dependent on quickness or having reflexes. He's what I describe as an Archie Moore guy. Cross-arm defense, he's going to move forward, and he could bang with that right hand. I think this is every bit the fight it was the first time. Unfortunately for my man Glenn Johnson, geography, home canvas advantage. I think Chad Dawson once again escapes with a very controversial decision.
I think it's going to be a very close fight. I mean, I think he's going to separate himself enough to make the fight clear that he won. I thought the first fight could be argued as a draw or a win for Glenn Johnson. I didn't see Chad Dawson winning it at all.
You know, I think there are some external and internal pressures with Chad Dawson. They are starting to try to build him, Gary Shaw and everybody, in Connecticut. Part of being a draw is being exciting. Right. So now, if he wants to stink out the joint and use his legs a little bit more and decide to win the fight 9-3, yet aesthetically it's not pleasing, and all of a sudden you hear it from the fans, it'll be very interesting what happens from a critical standpoint of how that decision or how that fight performance will be viewed. We've seen fighters in the past, when they fight in front of a home audience, there is such a need to be entertaining and pleasing that it's actually tactically the worst thing that happens to them.
And you get all kinds of other pressures, you know, getting people to the fight. You have a lot of friends and family
tickets.
coming, handling tickets,
Hook
all
me up.
that. Yeah, hotels and all that. And,
after parties.
And yeah, exactly. Who can't forget the after party? You know, you gotta you know, focus in on the fight itself, and that's hard. I mean, granted, he's got a good promoter that can handle all that stuff for him. The question is, has he? Yeah, I don't think he has a bad chin so much as I don't think he paces himself well, and he tires out at the back end of fights a lot like Jermaine Taylor. Yeah. And then he becomes susceptible. He starts to break down a bit. If Johnson starts faster in this fight, maybe that'll tire Johnson out. Who's, you know, he's a good fighter, but he's 40, and maybe that'll help Dawson later on.
That's the thing about Glenn Johnson. Glenn Johnson's not what I'd call an avalanche. He's a snowball. And he's got to roll. He's got to build up momentum, and then by the 5th, 6th rounds, he's rolling. But the first 3 or 4 really are about getting himself lathered and getting himself into the fight. On this undercard, Pedro Angulo takes on Harry Joe Yorgey. Folks, I'm telling you what, I am not calling for the upset special, but I'm on upset alert. I think this is a real fight. Angulo, if you don't stand in the pocket and go toe-to-toe trench warfare with him, he can be made to look very ordinary out on the perimeter. Yeah. Harry Yorgey is not Pernell Whitaker. I'm not saying that, but he's southpaw. He's got a pretty good set of legs. And I'm coming off the momentum of the Ronald Hearns victory, and I know it's Ronald, not Thomas. This is a confident fighter. I think we have a real fight here.
I agree with that. You know, but I think he's got some definite flaws. I mean, one, Yorgey is pretty slow. He brings back his jab very lazy, but he brings it back to his hip rather than to his chin. So I think Angulo can counter over the top. And he's much wider than Angulo in terms of his punching arc. And so I think Angulo, you know, if he can get in the pocket, he can pressure well. He can, you know, get inside and stay with his compact shots and bust Yorgey up. But I think I agree with you. This is going to be a really tough fight. I mean, Yorgey has just stepped up his last 2 fights, fighting 21-0 fighters. fighters, and he's beaten both those guys, knocking out Ronald Hearns, really, you know, in a pretty gutsy, sharp performance. This is going to be a tough fight.
I am going to take Angulo by late knockout in a fight that is more entertaining than people think, and I think Harry Joe Yorgey in defeat will earn a large measure of respect.
I agree with you. I go with Angulo by late stoppage.
So there you have it on HBO from the XL Center, Hartford, Connecticut. We come back. We wrap it up with news and notes. And we wrap it up on the next round with Gabriel Montoya and Steve Kim, brought to you by Everlast Worldwide. We go to the fight preview. Wednesday night fight, special edition on the Deuce. Jason Litzow takes on Johnny Edwards, and Rashad Holloway takes on Frankie Figueroa. Friday night at the Palms in Las Vegas, Zab Judah and Joel Casamayor co-headline. Then Saturday night, welterweight prospect Mike Jones, 18-0, takes on Raul Pinzon. Then Saturday in Germany for the WBA heavyweight title, David Haymaker takes on the giant Nikolai Valuev. Let's go back up top. There's a guy we're very familiar with, Rashad Holloway, talented young welterweight. He's kind of been hidden. And I asked him this yesterday in terms of my story. Rashad Holloway had been given a reputation as a very good sparring partner, and that's part of the problem. His reputation is now built on being a good sparring partner. You don't want to be the Weaver triplets. You don't want to be Maurice Harris. I think it's time for him to make his mark on national TV.
I would agree with you. You know, and the danger with being a sparring partner for all these top guys like Pacquiao and Margarito is that you start to develop that mentality that you don't attack. And if there's one knock on Holloway is that he doesn't let his hands go enough. You know, he tends to stand there and kind of watch his opponent feint a lot, and you can see the wheels turning and thinking, how am I going to attack, rather than letting his hands go. I saw a nice session with him and Pacquiao last Thursday, and he was letting it go in combination and really attacking. And when he was on offense, he was doing very well.
Yeah, in other words, think less, fight more. And Frankie Figueroa, last time we saw him, knockout of the year victim at the hands of Randall Bailey. Different styles, but again, keep that in mind. Frankie Figueroa is a guy that if you're the prospect you think you are, you've got to take care of business. And I guess we could file this one under how the mighty have fallen. Zab Judah and Joel Casamayor are fighting at the Palms, and you know what? I don't think anyone gives a damn, and I find it mystifying that Zab Judah is choosing an opportunity to fight on the Mayweather-Marquez undercard, which would have been televised, for this show. Who the hell is mismanaging this career?
I have no idea. He's not with PENG anymore, so maybe he's just doing it himself. But, you know, this fight, I'm kind of mad at Zab because this actually could be not an exciting fight, but at least a good knockout. Now we're stuck with the Yuri Foreman fight. But this, you know, Ubaldo's nickname should be opponent because he's lost to only the best. You know, Gato Figueroa, Jose Cotto, Miguel Cotto, Aron Arango, Vivian Harris, and Demetrius Hopkins. Okay, maybe not the best with Vivian Harris, but still, this is an opponent guy. You know, he's been off for a couple years. You know, I guess that 19th loss really kind of set him back a little bit, and he was a little depressed and took some time off. But this is just a get-back fight on a card that nobody's going to see and no one's going to care about.
You're right. Guys are never the same after that 18th loss. I don't know what that is. Mike Jones, here's a prospect that I really like, okay? If you went to Central Casting and said, build me a welterweight prospect, you'd build him like Mike Jones. Yeah. He can punch, he can bang, he can box. He might have some chinks in the armor, might be a front runner, may have a horrible chin, may fall apart under pressure. But you know what, folks? I'd like to see it. I don't understand in an era when everyone is being televised here, why is Mike Jones being hidden? And this is one of the problems I have with the game is the politics of the game. He's not aligned with the right manager/advisor, and he's not with one of the favorite promoters. But I give Russell Peltz credit. They're not just sitting around waiting for a date. No. They're going to make their own date. They're going to keep this kid busy, and you got to give the kid credit. He stayed patient, and he's being loyal for now. I hope this works out. But by the next fight, let's hope Mike Jones is able to get a shot like an Antoine Smith.
Yeah, absolutely. But and just go back to the last fight. You know, one of the last fights we were talking about, Alfred Angulo. He loses to Kermit Cintron, but he's been on HBO more than Kermit Cintron, who easily won, not easily won that fight, but clearly won that fight. And then you look at Mike Jones. He's not rebuilding his career after a loss. I mean, this is a guy that's an exciting prospect. He's good TV. He always comes to win, and he generally knocks his opponent out. Yet we can't see him.
It's one of those cases, not what you know or how good you are at it, it's who you know. And I think, unfortunately, that Russell Peltz, a man that I really respect, a real promoter, and I think should be in the Hall of Fames of all across because of what he's done in Philadelphia and some of the great fighters he's had, big events out there at the Spectrum. Right now, Russell Peltz is not looked upon as part of the Illuminati. Yeah. If he was with Golden Boy or if he was advised by Al Heyman, he would have been on HBO.
Right.
But they are building a real fighter. I want to see Mike Jones. He's a nice guy. He still works a day job. There's a great story. But beyond the great story, I think he might be a very, very good talent. Yeah. That's the important thing. Here's the thing. David Nikolai Valuev. You know what? I'm going to say it right now. I'm going to go with the big fella. I am going to go with Valuev. I think he's a real heavyweight. He's not an easy guy to beat. David Haye, as far as I'm concerned, as a heavyweight, was not overwhelmed what I saw with Monty Barrett. Now, I don't want to say he's rusty, but I think in between rounds, they're going to have to make him shower down with some WD-40. Give me Valuev.
You know, I'm kind of leaning the same way, man. People dog Valuev as not very skilled, not that good of a fighter, more of a freak show, but I disagree. His footwork and balance is not the worst in the world. He actually is pretty good with it. His jab is straight. Sure, the right hand is slow, but it's a very heavy jab from a 300-plus pound man. And you look at David Haye, he has yet to really prove that he's a heavyweight. The Monty Barrett fight really told us nothing. He's got a lot of defensive problems. He kind of leaps in wide. I think that, between the size difference and the straight punches of Valuev, this is a very losable fight for David Haye. I'm gonna go with Haye by decision in a fight that we don't really think he won. But I think, because he's kind of the money guy, and they're looking to build him in the Klitschko fights, he's going to get the decision. But I think that Valuev is going to give him a run for his money.
Stylistically, you talked about it, the jab. It's not what I'd call a piston. It's certainly not Larry Holmes, but it's long and it's straight. It's like a telephone pole, as they say. And the one thing he does become very steady with that jab, and it's also very straight. Haye is a guy that kind of runs in. If you look at the Monty Barrett fight, I think technically he kind of fell apart a little bit. He's going to have to take some chances by running in, just by sheer momentum. If Valuev can time him with that right hand, I think that's going to be an issue because distance is going to be a factor. David Haye from the outside, I don't think he's just going to be able to purely outbox Nikolai Valuev. No. He's going to have to take some chances and get inside that reach. It's not that easy. It really is not. And the one thing I was really impressed with Ruslan Shagayev against him, stood in the pocket at mid-range. I don't know if David Haye is going to be able to do that.
He's just not that kind of fighter, No. And I think, too, his stamina is not the greatest. Now he's carrying extra weight, and I think that might tire him out even more. His one knockout loss, his one loss period, he tired out in the 5th round by throwing too many punches. And if his strategy is to stick and move and run around a lot and then get leaned on by Valuev when he tries to come inside, I could see a late stoppage.
Yes, sir. Taking a look at some tidbits as we wrap it up here on the next round. Chris Arreola on December 5th. He could be fighting either Derek Martini and Rossi or Brian Minto. January 23rd, Boxing After Dark on HBO. Rogers Matagua takes on Yuriakis Gamboa, and Stephen Lueveno defends his WBO featherweight title against Juanma Lopez. Then February 13th, Pinoy Power 3. February at the Las Vegas Hilton. There's a blast from the past. Your main event that night will be Nonito Donaire. Let's go back up top. Chris Arreola, fine. You're going to give him a date. He's on the Heyman Boxing Organization underneath Paul Williams against most likely Sergio Martinez. No problems with that. You know what? I'd much rather see Brian Minto. Minto can bang. He's got a good left hook. He makes for a fun fight. Derek Rossi, nothing against him. But he's a former football player that has got undressed by Eddie Chambers. Give me Brian Minto.
Yeah, and Derek Rossi's is not going to, maybe it'll build Arreola's confidence that he can knock out a guy who shouldn't be in the ring with him.
Yeah, but you're on HBO.
Yeah, you're on HBO.
You're on HBO. Come on.
Let's see Brian Minto. That's an all-action fight. Minto's a rugged, guy who's going to come forward, throw a lot of punches to match, Arreola's output. Give me that fight.
Derek Rossi's actually a step backward from Travis Walker.
Absolutely.
And again, I don't want to hear that Chris Arreola was game and he was courageous. You know what? I'm not going to give a guy too much credit just for being just a little bit less out of shape than he was before. If you're going to be on HBO at this stage of your career, you just fought a Klitschko, guess what? You shouldn't go that far backwards.
And they're not doing him any favors. They should look at the Klitschko fight, see what they did wrong, and try to improve on it. And Derek Rossi is not going to bring any of the things out that Klitschko did. And he's not going to expose any of the flaws. You're not going to learn anything in that fight.
Gabe, I love this show, January 23rd. This is what Boxing After Dark is about.
Yes.
Smallish fighters who are hungry, relatively unknown, trying to go places. And Rogers Matagua, if there's a guy that deserves a big fight, you want to talk about a guy being in Fight of the Years every time he fights. Rogers Matagua is the real-life Rocky. He's based out of Philadelphia. He has an unbelievable chin, unbelievable heart. Technique is not the greatest, but really all that is washed away because of this, the ticker. And let me tell you something. If Gamboa can't get rid of Matagua early, and I don't think he will, he's going to find out that Matagua looks much easier to beat on paper and from outside the ring than actually standing a foot in front of him.
We're going to find out what Gamboa has late in a fight. When he's unloaded everything in the kitchen sink on Matagua, and Matagua is still there like a monster movie villain. He's going to keep coming forward. He's going to land those heavy chopping shots, and we're going to find out if Gamboa is a guy that is a distance fighter or a front runner.
Lueveno Lopez, I think, is actually a tactical battle. I know people are expecting Juanma to blow him away. I'm not. He's the guy moving up in weight. And one thing about Lueveno, He's not an intimidating guy, but guess what? You can't intimidate him either, and he's a solid technical counterpuncher. I count this as another real fight.
Oh, it's a very real fight. And you know, Juanma has shown that he can be countered, you know, and I'm really curious to see him against a fellow southpaw. And Levin was a very smart fighter. He stays within the pocket, he stays within himself, and doesn't, you know, he's not overly aggressive. He's just looking for you to make a mistake. And Juanma's showing that he's starting to make some mistakes. It's a very tough fight to come back after such a grueling war with Motagua.
Yeah. This week's edition of the main event with Steve Kim, we've already got Glenn Johnson in the can. And, folks, you're not going to want to miss this, but we got R.A. the Rugged Man, the hip-hop version of Brian Kenny, who just really got into it with Floyd Mayweather. I don't know if you've heard this interview yet, but you got to YouTube this. But, wow, I think the Rugged Man, he really spoke for a lot of boxing fans, didn't he, when he got into it with Floyd Mayweather and the things he said?
Yeah, it's clear that he kind of maybe spent some time on the forums. He's heard all the different arguments against Floyd Mayweather, but it was beautiful. It's rare that I listen to an interview and go, I'm kind of jealous. This is the things that we've all been saying, you know, amongst ourselves or sometimes on camera. But when you try to do it with Floyd, you know, he either doesn't want to be interviewed by you or walks away.
Or Leonard Ellerbe tackles you.
Yeah, you know, and I don't want to be, you know, I don't know if you've seen the I Got Muscles video, but I don't want to be rubbed down by Leonard Ellerbe. So, yeah, it's a beautiful thing. I can't wait to hear the interview.
So here, that's it for this week's edition of TNR. On behalf of Gabriel Montoya and the rest of Max Boxing, till the next round, goodbye, everybody.